A carousel of color, wonderful, wonderful color.
Walt Disney presents
The wonderful world of color.
from Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, Part 1 of Pollyanna. And now your host, Walt Disney.
I wonder if you've ever noticed how often we use the name of one person to describe another person with the same characteristics. For example, a stingy old killjoy is called a Scrooge. A Shylock is a money-grabbing skinflint. And of course, a lady killer is a Romeo or Don Juan. And then there's Midas, Judas, Houdini, Santa Claus, and so on. Oddly enough, most of these descriptive names belong to men. The women folks come out a little better. About the only one we can think of is Pollyanna, from the book by Eleanor Porter. Today, to be called a Pollyanna is not entirely complimentary. It means somebody who is so everlastingly optimistic and sunny and cheerful that you can hardly stand it. Actually, even the original Pollyanna didn't go quite that far. And certainly our Pollyanna doesn't in the story we're about to bring you on the Wonderful World of Color. So suppose we take a minute here and see what kind of a girl our Pollyanna is.
Little pixie face, ready to embrace any kind of mischief. Angel, devil, both and more. That's Pollyanna, unafraid to say what she has to say, full of frowns and laughter. Heart of gold, so young, so old. That's Pollyanna. Everywhere she goes, everyone she knows feels a little brighter. Love is all she gives, but because she lives, their cares and woes are lighter. If the sun grew cold and the spring grew old, this would never faze her. There's a glad game she would play. First she'd smile, then she'd say, tomorrow is another day. That's Pollyanna.
And that's Haley Mills, an unforgettable Pollyanna. And now our story.
It begins on one of those long, lazy summer days in a small town called Harrington.
Now, boy, I've told you time and again. Now, look at me. There's no horsing around when the train's coming in. You hear me? Now, go on, get away.
Do you know why I hate Sunday? Because it means the starting of another week.
That's true.
That's when you can play the glad game.
Here it comes. Miss Goody Two-Shoes is going to find something about Sunday to be glad about.
Oh, lay off her, Angie.
Stop it.
If you knew how to play the game, then you could find something to be glad about, too. But you don't.
Huh? All right, Miss Smarty Pants. What's so good about Sunday?
Well, there's always something.
Uh.
You can be glad because...
Well, because what?
Because it will be 6 whole days before Sunday comes around again. Huh?
Shit.
Well, as you can see, Pollyanna has brought a new and different philosophy to the people of Harrington. Now, it's plain that somebody's going to have to change, and it isn't likely to be Pollyanna. On the other hand, Aunt Polly owns Harrington, and she's against any changes around the town. So, to coin a phrase, the plot thickens. And we'll be back in just a moment to show you some of the excitement of next week's part 2 of Pollyanna. When I first arrived in Hollywood many years ago, one man who seemed about 15 feet tall to me was the undisputed king of motion picture makers. 40 years later, he was still king. That man was Cecil B. DeMille. This is the DeMille Award for service to the motion picture industry. I'm very proud that I was the first one ever to receive it. Tonight, immediately following this program, this network will present a show I feel a special interest in. It's called The World's Greatest Showman, the legend of Cecil B. DeMille. Now, appearing in person will be Yul Brynner, Charlton Heston, Bob Hope, Betty Hutton, Anthony Quinn, Barbara Stanwyck, James Stewart, Gloria Swanson, the Reverend Billy Graham, and Mr. Samuel Goldwyn, another great showman. So no matter what age you are, young or old, I recommend you stay tuned in. Now back to the wonderful world of color and more about part 2 of our story, Pollyanna.